folks, and welcome back to the Freestyle Slalom analysis channel. Today we will be looking at the difference in style between Russian and Asian skaters. Hope you stick around! First, we'll look at how the shoulders relate to the hips. Notice how Andrey's hips and shoulders move as one part, as if they were locked. This differs from how KSJ and Yin's hips and shoulders move separately. When they are locked as one part, we perceive it as being rigid and precise, and this helps with the perception of elegance, as I'll explain later. When they are able to move separately though, we perceive it as being more dynamic, and this helps with the perception of rhythm, just like I explained in John Larosea's analysis video. It's not hard to see that Andrey's back and neck are both very straight. Once again, this can be perceived as rigid, but it also adds to elegance. His head moves more freely than his shoulders, but it's almost like he trained himself to refuse to look ahead in turns. If you consider Yin and KSJ's backs, they are also straight, however, their neck is bent forward a little bit. I'm unsure if this makes us perceive their style differently, but it's a definite trait of Asian skaters. You'll notice that both Yin and Sungjin more clearly look ahead in turns, like a sort of spotting technique. Another thing I talked about in John Larosea's video is amplitude, or rather how much width the skaters quote-unquote use with their feet and legs. Looking at Andrey, his skates almost move parallel to the line of cones, and the angles are sharp and narrow. So there's not much amplitude there. However, he does seem to make his movements look big in another way. Instead of his skates, he uses his body and arms to be quote-unquote big. Once again, this attributes more to elegance than being dynamic. Both the Asian skaters, however, use both a lot of amplitude with their feet and also with their arms. Let's look at rhythm next. Again, there's a clear difference when you look at how their bodies move up and down to a beat. Andrey's beat is much less pronounced than KSJ's or Jin's. This leads to less variation in the style, leading to a more predictable movement. And because of this, it's very hard to mask mistakes should you make any. I'll try and explain this in more detail. Alright, so here's my attempt on explaining what I mean when I say that it's more easy to make a mistake when there's a certain movement. So imagine that there's a line, right? There's a line, and it keeps on going straight. And you can predict its endpoint. It's going to end up here, right? Now, imagine that there's also one bump in that line over here. Let's see, over here. Obviously, it looks like it's a mistake because it doesn't belong there, right? Because the rest of the line is just flat. That means that this one bump, and even if it's just one bump, it will stand out as if it's a mistake. This is what, well, basically Andrey Shitov's skating looks like, but he doesn't make mistakes. He only has straight lines like this, very nice and rigid and elegant. Now, if you've got more rhythm in your skating, then your line might look more like this. Like there's a lot of bumps, right? Like the beat. And then here there's one bump and it might look a little bit different than all of the other bumps, but you can't really make sure or you distinguish that bigger bump that's different from the other bumps, so you don't really understand that it's a mistake or not. That's what I mean with masking the mistake. So it might not even look like a mistake if there's a continuous beat or if there's a lot of variance in your regular line. So that's sort of my explanation on well, really what makes a difference in having more rhythm than not. So while I think that having a beat and rhythm in your skating is really nice to look at because it also shows more dynamic skating, having like a flat line and a consistency, there's a certain elegance to it. and it's very hard to achieve, I think, as well. And that's why I think Andrey Shitov is very good at skating. Like, it also makes him more precise in the rest of the line. I'll show you an example in the next video. In this clip, there's one part I think shows Andrey's precision perfectly. Keep in mind that everything I told you before, he barely looks ahead, his shoulders and hips are locked together, and this means that the moment where he gets out of this spin must be perfectly timed and his feet must be in the exact position to be able to continue on. And this is what I mean with precision, and it takes a lot of training. Now let's talk a little bit about how all the previous points make me feel. When I'm watching Andrey skate, I'm constantly on edge, basically. I feel like I'm holding my breath during his entire line, hoping he doesn't make a mistake. And this makes it very tiring to watch, but at the same time, when he finishes the line perfectly, it makes me feel relieved that everything went so smooth. There is a feeling of respect towards the hours and hours of practice he's put into this art. But it also makes sure that there's a visible difficulty alongside the elegance. Now, if you compare that to, for example, KSJ in this video, when I watch him skate, I feel less on edge. It's almost like I'm allowing him to skate freely. And then there's no sense of, oh, it must be like this. He needs to make this kind of move right now. My brain just expects there to be variation. And this makes me feel more free to simply enjoy the skating that I am watching. Of course, KSJ makes everything look very easy, but the knowledge of knowing that those moves that he does are extremely difficult to make it look so easy. You only know that it's really difficult when you think about it, or when you try yourself to make those moves look that easy. That's about it. Let's finish off with a conclusion. First off, I want to say thanks to Andrey Shitov, Yoker and Kim Sung-jin for making the combo video and allowing me to analyze it. I really love that skaters I greatly respect do the same combo, and which was choreographed, by the way, by Yoker himself, and that they do so in their own style. I always found there's a clear difference between Russian and Asian style skating, and I think this combo video really shows it, and it was a great example in showing or navigating these differences. I think what I conclude is that there's a lot of attention being paid to posture and locking your shoulders and your hips, which make the Russian style look more rigid but also elegant. This in contrast to the more dynamic Asian style that is able to mask mistakes more easily and allows your brain to relax when you're watching this style. I regretfully had to use the term Russian versus Asian style because all styles are always personal and individual. And there's also a more specific Chinese style, which is also Asian, which is somehow a combination between both dynamic and more rigid styles. I had to call it something, and I didn't want to call it rigid and dynamic styles because all skaters always possess both of these traits in some way. Hopefully this video was useful to you in some way. If it was, just leave a like. If it wasn't, comment on why that it wasn't. Of course, if you want to keep updated on the next analysis video, just click the subscribe button. I also left links to the people in the video below in the description. So if you want to check them out, I just made it real easy for you. I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, peace.